Welcome back. This is part 2 of Ask the King episode 23 for April 26, 2012. Be sure to watch part 1. I answered a lot of common questions people have been asking me over the past month, and I think it was really informative. So check that out. But without further ado, let's jump right back into it. Actually, this is another kind of a common question. A couple people asked me it, so let's mention it. Tabletop gaming. People want to know if I've ever done tabletop gaming, whether it's things like Warhammer, whether it's things like, I'm trying to think of a couple different ones. I know there's a couple different ones that people play. Or even to the point of card gaming, like Magic the Gathering, some people have asked me about. Let me put it to you this way, no. At least in my circles of friends, those things were not very popular. When I was growing up, it was all about video games, and about Street Fighter and arcades and stuff like that. But I am aware of them. I have been to events where this stuff is going on. In fact, a lot of the conventions I've been attending, they have this kind of stuff going on. And I do find it interesting. I can understand why it would be fun. I think the extent of tabletop gaming I've done is playing a game of Risk. And let me put it to you this way. I probably played maybe 3 or 4 games of Risk total in my entire life, and they took like 2 days long to finish. So that's the extent of my tabletop gaming experience. I can understand why it's addictive. I can understand why it's fun, but I was just never into it. Okay? Okay. Let's get into these meat of these questions. Next question. Whoops. Hi, Phil. Obviously, your opinion is highly valued when you review games of series such as The Hateful Truth. And it's also obvious that you loved role-playing games of the past. Final Fantasy IV, 6, Chrono Trigger is my personal favorite. However, I could be wrong, but it seems that what people are saying is that for some reason you dislike Final Fantasy VII. My question is, what exactly do you dislike about Final Fantasy VII? I personally think that it was a great RPG. Please give us a mini hateful truth about the game. By the way, this is the 3rd time asking the question, but you never responded. So here's hoping to have you answer this. That's from TSF2. So yes, I'm finally going to answer it. I'm not going to do a mini hateful truth because it's going to take too long, but I will say this. The Final Fantasy series of games, when they were going through the Nintendo and the SNES, had this, this evolution. And I really feel that at that time of Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger was the best time for RPGs. There were other series as well that were going on at the same time that were really freaking good. You had Dragon Quest, you had Lunar. There were all these different role-playing games going on at the same time that were really high quality. And then, all of a sudden, Final Fantasy makes this leap to the PlayStation. And it was a giant announcement. It was actually released on 7/7/1997. So it was like even a date. It has a play on numbers. Oh, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII. So you start playing it, and let me put it to you this way. I think a lot of people hold Final Fantasy VII on a pedestal because it was the first major RPG to ever be in 3D, meaning to have 3D graphics, not 2D drawn graphics. It was the first CD-based Final Fantasy, okay? And it was on the PlayStation, which was an insanely popular system at the time. Like everyone, you have to get the PlayStation, you have to play Final Fantasy VII, okay? I really think that it was overly hyped. I think that in a lot of people's minds, Final Fantasy VII was actually the first Final Fantasy they ever played, and because of that, they hold it up on this pedestal that this is the best role-playing game ever made, okay? There are people who will say that Final Fantasy VII is just the best one out of all of them. It just is. And you ask them why, oh, well, the graphics and the story and this gameplay element and that gameplay element. I grew up earlier than that with the earlier Final Fantasies, with Final Fantasy IV and 6 in particular, which were actually called 2 and 3 in the United States at the time. I thought the story was great. You had a multitude of characters, major story arcs, twists, turns. Final Fantasy VI in particular, one of the longest, interesting RPG plots that doesn't drag out. That's the other thing about it. It was perfectly paced, never dragged out or felt like it was taking too long, and you get emotional attachment to those characters. Final Fantasy VII, in comparison, the narrative is not that good. There's several parts of the game where the story drags out, several things that are never really explained, big plot holes. For the first time in a Final Fantasy series, the ending was ambiguous and didn't really explain a damn thing about what happened after you beat the game, and actually became kind of anticlimactic because after that, Final Fantasy games and role-playing games in general started having endings that weren't very good. And that was really the first game that kind of did that. Had a, what the fuck did I just see ending? Well, I thought I was going to get more than that. Especially after the ending of Final Fantasy VI, which is like fucking 20 minutes long, explains what happens to every character after the game, an amazingly emotional ending, and then they just throw it all away with Final Fantasy VII. What it really feels like they were trying to do is they were trying to push the series in a different direction, the direction that it's gone in now. Amazing visual presentation, amazing art direction, okay? Tweaked gameplay to the point where they think it's good, even though the fans might not agree, but kind of going in its own direction and ignoring the fact that the story, the characters, these are the major focuses of role-playing games at that time, that those should be the focus of the game. And I really feel that the game suffered because of that. Again, I think there's a group of people who this was their first role-playing game, and because of that, they hold it on a pedestal, especially because Final Fantasy VIII was fucking horrendous. Final Fantasy VIII, probably by far the worst Final Fantasy game in the series. It was just horribly boring, horrible story, everything about it was horrible, okay? So, having that be the first 3D Final Fantasy, I think it's overhyped, and a lot of people just like it too much, you know what I mean? And, it's funny, again, because, you know, I get the feeling a lot of people who think, oh, it's the best, they never played those classic games. And then if they were to play them today, they probably wouldn't like them because, I don't really like the graphics. They're 2D, you know? Oh, the gameplay is kind of repetitive and boring. Yeah, but that's what JRPGs were back then. You had to fight repetitive enemies and grind, but that was part of the enjoyment of the game because you leveled up, you gained new abilities and spells by going through the grind, so it was rewarding. It wasn't like a lot of the times today where you just have to go through fights for the sake of going through fights to kill time. And back in those days, there was a purpose to it. So, I don't know. For me, Final Fantasy VII, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying I think that it was massively overhyped and that people give it way too much credit because I really think that the story, the narrative, the pacing, the gameplay, and the characters of the previous Final Fantasy games, 4 and 6 in particular, were actually better than Final Fantasy VII, and people just give Final Fantasy VII way too much credit simply because it was 3D. Ooh, the graphics were 3D. You know, there's only so much you can give credit to because they jumped to 3D, okay? Okay. Let's see. Oh, this question is from Jean Hu, and the question is, you gave the previous YouTube format a -2 out of 10 in your Ask the King episode. Now what she's talking about is back in 2009, YouTube forced a new format onto everyone. They changed everyone's channel layouts. And I actually gave the new layout, which was the previous layout to the one that you see now, a -2. Because I said, not only is it confusing, it takes away functionality and you forced it down everyone's throat, -2. Okay, that's how I reviewed it in Ask the King. Or not Ask the King, in Hateful Truth. I did a Hateful Truth on it. So let me continue the question now. Now, YouTube again has a new format. What score do you give it? Or are you going to do a Hateful Truth on it? I actually, personally, the new YouTube layouts, there's pros and cons. The pros are, it's actually at a glance easier to see what a person's doing. You can see all of their recently uploaded videos, you can see all of their most frequent playlists, and you can lay it out to the point where it kind of makes sense. At the same time, there's some bugs that are still not worked out. For example, you can't make your featured video your most recently uploaded video, because if you do, YouTube decides to fucking show a video that's currently uploading now, so obviously it's not live yet. So that's a huge bug they've never fixed. But the thing I really dislike about it is everyone's channel looks exactly the fucking same. At least with the previous format, you had color options, font options, you could change the whole layout of the page to look different, and you can customize it to what game you were playing. You can't do that anymore. Now it's just based off of the background you put on the channel. The main channels of everyone's page is gray and white and looks the fucking same. I don't know if this is easier for YouTube. Maybe it was easier on their servers. I don't know what the purpose was behind it, but I really don't like the fact that they did that. I actually think that it would have been better if they left some individuality to what people were doing, and unfortunately that pisses me off. I would probably give the new channel layout maybe a 7 out of 10. There's a lot of positives, but the visual appeal is blah, and there's too many bugs, and they still force it down everyone's throat without asking, so I disagree with those practices. Okay. Next question. Phil, I'm probably outside of your normal demographics. I'm 40, I love video games, and found your channel about a year ago, and I've never stopped watching. Favorite playthroughs are your Fallout and Elder Scrolls. My question is, besides the DLC for Skyrim, are you planning on doing any more side content before the DLC? And that is from Cajun0816. The bottom line is this. Yes, I realize that I didn't do absolutely everything when I played Skyrim. There are a couple things I left out. I know there's a Bard's Guild. There's a couple missions where you become the true leader of the Thieves Guild and such, and I didn't do that stuff. But for the most part, I completed almost every single major. I did complete every major quest, and I almost completed most of the side stuff. To go back at this point, there wouldn't really be that much left to do besides try to hunt a bunch of dragons and, like I said, do those handful of quests. I really think my time's better spent playing stuff I've never played before. And not to say that I didn't enjoy Skyrim. Skyrim is my longest playthrough ever, clocking in at almost 400 parts. I did as much in that game as I wanted to do, and I think now that I've kind of like put a nail in it, you know what I mean? Does that mean I'll never go back? No. If there's a DLC, I'm definitely going back, but I really don't see any reason for me, unlike Fallout, where when I was playing the Fallout games, I definitely skipped a lot of the content of those games, and it was worth it for me to go back and try to do those things. At this point, I don't see myself going back to Skyrim. I think I did as much as I wanted to do in the game. I completed the vast majority of the quests that are interesting, so I don't see any reason to go back. Next question. Oh boy, a lot of people asked about this. Hey Phil, around the time of this post, L.I. Joe, who is, by the way, a competitive Street Fighter player, is being talked to by Brazzers about a sponsorship. If you don't know what that is, Brazzers is a porno website. Pornographic, okay? Do you feel it should matter who wants to sponsor a player, events, etc.? Also, would you take an offer from a porn company if they wanted something similar? Not competitive gaming exactly. Would it be something similar to your contract with Machinima? And that's from Divin Elements. Here's what's happening. Street Fighter players, and I hate to say this because I know I'm going to take a lot of hate for this, Street Fighter players are trying to find a way to make a living off of Street Fighter. And back when I was a competitive player, it wasn't a viable lifestyle. You knew that no matter what, even if you won every tournament, it was still, like Justin Wong, who's winning every tournament at the time, still was struggling to make his main thing. Like, he still needed help. He still was part of, for a time he was part of Empire. They were helping him financially, okay? Eventually, this started to change, especially with the release of Street Fighter 4. Fighting games started to get a lot more mainstream attention. All of a sudden, sponsors started stepping up. So you had companies like Mad Catz, like Hori. You had some third-party companies who were interested in stepping up and sponsoring these players. Now, all of a sudden, it seems that there's more than ever, there's these people who are competitive in the community, and this is it. This is what I want to do. I just want to play Street Fighter, and I want to make money. If Justin Wong can do it, and if this player can do it, I can do it. I can live off of Street Fighter. And so, they're basically just grasping at straws for whatever they can take. This company, Brazzers, is a pornographic company. They make porn videos, okay? Steps up to L.I. Joe, I guess. I don't know how the relationship happened, because I didn't fucking watch the interview. I don't care about, interview with the guy who's the head of Brazzers, but Brazzers basically is saying, listen, we have money to throw around, and we want to advertise. They probably understand that competitive Street Fighter players, and even people who are fans of the competitive scene, are young males. Whether they're legal or not, doesn't really matter. They're young males, and this is a way to attract attention to their business. These are the people primarily who pay for porn. So what they're saying is, gee, let's advertise, let's sponsor some major players like L.I. Joe. Let's even hold our own events. Not to say that the events are going to be full of nudity and titties and porn stars, but let's hold our own events, the Brazzers Tournament Series, and just get our name out there. That's their marketing strategy for their business. But it's up to the players themselves to decide whether or not this is viable for their image. Maybe L.I. Joe thinks that it's cool to be in the porn industry, okay? I don't know. I can tell you this. From my personal perspective, I understand that I have a fan base that's, yes, some of them are of legal age to be watching porn. Some of them, many of them are not. We're talking teenagers. We're talking, kids. We're talking younger people who like video games and they watch my videos because of it. No, they shouldn't have porn forced down their throat. Today, here comes The Walking Dead, sponsored by Brazzers, and their new series, Slap Your Mother Because She's Fucking Hot, or something. I don't know, No, that's not something that I'm going to do. My content is not in direct relation to that company, and I would not accept sponsorship from a company who has nothing to do with the same thing. I wouldn't say, oh, Jack Daniel's whiskey. I wouldn't take that as a sponsor because, let's face it, Jack Daniels is alcohol. A lot of my audience isn't old enough to drink, so I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? I really think that advertising should cater to the audience. So for L.I. Joe, does he really even have an audience? You know what I mean? He doesn't have a YouTube presence per se. He's just a major Street Fighter player. He's looking to make a buck. And he's looking to do this for free, or not for free, but full time and make money off of it. So for him, all he sees is a paycheck. He doesn't see the actual repercussions. The fact that if you bring porno into the competitive Street Fighter community, you have a huge fan base of people who watch it who are underage and now are going to be exposed to porn for the first time, maybe. Of course, I'm not that naive to think that these people aren't already watching porn on the internet, but still, it's a conflicting message. I thought Street Fighter was supposed to be a family-friendly environment. Let's bring porn into it. You know what I mean? And Evo has already made an official announcement that no, they will never discuss this sponsor. It will not be brought up at Evo. It will not be allowed to be discussed at Evo because they're a family-friendly environment and they want nothing to do with it. So, personally myself, I'm not saying that I'm against porn. I'm not saying that porn is evil. I'm saying that for what I do on YouTube, I understand my fan base is not people who should be involved with porn. And therefore, I would never accept sponsorship. Plus, by the way, I already have a sponsor, Machinima, who's paying me enough that I don't have to worry about making $100 billion and getting sponsored by these companies, okay? That's not happening with these people who are competitive Street Fighter players. So they're kind of like, oh, I want to do this full time. Just give me money, whoever it is. And so I think that's what's going on with L.I. Joe. I don't really know the situation, but I think it's a slippery slope. I think that it could be a negative for the community, a huge negative for the community, and hopefully it works out positively and it doesn't blow up in their face, okay? Hold on, because unfortunately I forgot to start my stopwatch. All right, I have about 10 minutes left to get through some questions here. The next question, what got you into video games? Was it a friend, a relative, seeing video game advertisements? What was it? And that's from Ghost2 Prodigy. That's an interesting question with a very simple answer. When I was growing up, my uncle actually had all these video games on his computer. He also had the classic Atari systems. He had the Atari, I think one of the older ones, and then later he had the Atari 7800. And I used to play games whenever I went over his house, and that was my first exposure to video games. Later on, he gave me many of his games, including his Atari 7800. And that's that. Kind of got hooked from there. Then started going to arcades. Wow, these arcade games look way better than the home console stuff. Then the NES came out, and that was history. I got hooked. The next question. Let's see here. I lost my place. Here we go. Next question is from Thin Unit. And the question is, hey Phil, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like over the past number of years, musical themes in games have really been de-emphasized as part of the gaming experience. Looking back at some games from the 90s and early 2000s, such as Wolfenstein, Doom, Unreal Tournament, Command & Conquer, they all had epic music and themes. Now it just seems so rare to find a game with great music. Do you agree with this sentiment? How important do you think it is having great music in a game to enhance the gamer's experience? 100% yes, I agree. And the basic example I can give you is this. Back then, you had these catchy tunes, you know, these ditties that I can still remember by heart some of the music from the role-playing games I played. From Doom, I can you know, classic tunes that as you played these games, they were caught in your head, and they were just as much a part of the gaming experience as the gameplay. Today, a lot of these games just sell out, and you hear orchestral soundtrack, generic bullshit in the background, and let's face it, how many games can you say, oh, I remember the theme from that game? You know what I mean? There's a couple exceptions. Uncharted's main theme is really catchy, but how many times during the actual game do you hear the Uncharted theme besides the title screen? You know what I mean? Most of the game is orchestral music. A lot of these games are just going for that because they're trying to become bigger productions, to which case they think that they're like movies. I personally think that music should be more of an emphasis in these games. They really need to hire musicians to write custom soundtracks for these games. Let's face it, right now we've got video game cover bands of 8-bit games, 16-bit games. How many video game cover bands do you think are going to be in 20 years playing the Halo theme? Zero, okay? So let's really face it, the music today has become all orchestral and more like a movie production than anything else, and it really has suffered. Next question is from Deccan, or D3K3N, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, and he says, Phil, if you were in Mortal Kombat, what would your fatality be? Would probably be involve repeated ball shots, possibly ripping off of the testicles, and maybe shoving them down the opponent's throat. And if it were a woman, well, I don't know. I didn't even think about it that much. I liked ripping off the testicles, though. Alright, the last question from the forums, then we're going to go to Twitter questions. This question is, hey Phil, have you ever met a wrestler, be it from WWE, TNA, or any other promotion? If you did, can you tell us how the experience went? And that's from Abinha1. The answer is yes. I actually met Steven Richards. He actually, when I was working at Best Buy for a time, no, I'm sorry, it was Circuit City? No, it was Best Buy. When I was working for Best Buy, he randomly came into the store. And I said, excuse me, I apologize if, this is out of place, but are you Steven Richards? He said, yes, I am. I said, wow, I'm actually a fan of yours. We shook hands. And first of all, the guy's fucking tall as hell. He doesn't look tall on TV. The guy was towering above me. I said, I'm a fan. And, I've been watching you for a long time on ECW, also on WWE. But I noticed recently they're not using you. Like, you're not on TV. What the hell happened? Where do you hear this? This is a true story. I swear to God. He says, well, Phil, here's what happened. We were at a company Christmas party. One of the VPs of WWE got drunk and said something about my wife, and I punched him in his fucking face. And now the funniest part about this, I wonder if it was the Vice President of Talent Relations, John Laurinaitis, and he got drunk and he said something about his wife. I don't know if it was John Laurinaitis or not, but that's pretty funny. Basically, some VP gets drunk, says something ridiculous about his wife, gets punched in the face, and they took him off TV. And actually, after that, he never really went back to mainstream TV, and then eventually was released by WWE. So that was a crazy story that he told me that. And it's funny that that question was asked, because that's a pretty good story. Alright, now some Twitter questions. I know we're definitely running out of time now, but let's get into them. Let's see. From Ian Foster. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, but he says, what are your thoughts on Yoshinoro Ono stepping down from within Capcom as like the head of fighting games, and will it have an effect on fighting games? If you haven't heard, during the course of the past month, it was announced that Yoshinoro Ono, who everyone talks about, who pretty much has been, they say, oh, he's the creative head of the fighting game division of Street Fighter. They say, oh, he was responsible for Street Fighter 4. No, he wasn't responsible for Street Fighter 4. The people who fucking asked for Street Fighter 4 for a decade are responsible for Street Fighter 4's success. But that being said, he was the head of the project. And since then, he's been heavily promoting every fighting game coming out from Capcom. Recently, he's taking an awful lot of heat for the fact that Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out only 9 months or 8 months after the original Marvel 3, for the fact that there's been like 10 versions of Street Fighter 4, and now Street Fighter Cross Tekken comes out with these gimmicky gems that no one in the competitive community asked for or wanted. And so there's a lot of negative things happening in the fighting game scene, and Ono has been taking a lot of the heat for it. Well, all of a sudden, in the past month, it's announced he's very ill. He's in the hospital, and he's stepping down from being the head of the fighting game division of Capcom. To which everyone's saying, isn't it funny that at a time when he's taking massive criticism and flack and negativity for all the things that have been going on with fighting games, he mysteriously gets sick and now can't do it anymore. A lot of people are saying that maybe within Capcom he was asked to willingly step down, and that they would do it in a respectful way rather than kind of like shame him. But from what everyone's saying, sales numbers for Street Fighter Cross Tekken are poor compared to previous Capcom fighters. The game's taking a lot of criticism from the competitive community, saying it's a horrible fucking game. I don't know. I don't know if that's what's going on with Ono. Will this affect fighting games? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if Capcom's going to continue their sellout mentality of let's keep charging multiple times for the same shit, re-release the same game 100 times and charge more money. Put characters in the game and then say that they're not there, and then later on people hack the game and find out they are there, and that they're going to charge later on to unlock these characters. I mean, there's some shady business practices in effect with Capcom right now. Hopefully it'll improve. I don't know if it will. Alright, next question. From Ep.23, and he says, what was the motivation for the goatee and slicked hair? It's hard to remember what you looked like without them. Well, I've talked about this before, but I guess I'll say it again. When I lost my full-time job in late 2010, I said I wanted to make a life change. I really did. Something that symbolized that this is the next phase of my life. And being that I was going into business for myself to try and make YouTube into my career, I wanted something to signify a change, and so I started growing a beard. Now, this is something I hadn't done before, because at my job, obviously, if you have an office job, you're supposed to be well-shaven all the time, and to grow this out, it would have had to look like stubble, and it would have looked unprofessional for a while as it grew out. So I was never really able to grow a beard like that, and finally I said, here's the time. It doesn't matter. I can grow this out. No one's going to tell me go shave, I look like a bum. And so I did, and then my hair subsequently. I knew there would be a time when the hair looked weird when it was in the middle before it got long enough. Now that it's long enough, it looks good when it's slicked back. So it kind of signifies my change from, you know, having a full-time job, working for the man, as they say, and going into a new phase of my life where I'm self-employed, where I'm independent, and that's really what it symbolizes, and that's why I did it. Let's see. From MR Nader 136, he says, what is the worst game you've ever played in your life? This is probably going to be the same answer that a lot of people have said who were around at this time. E.T. for the Atari, I believe it was 2600, is the worst game I've ever played. I'm not going to go into detail about it right now. A lot of people have asked the Angry Video Game Nerd to play E.T. for 100 years. I don't know if he ever did, because I don't follow him anymore. I think he might have, actually. But that is the worst game. It really is. It's fucking awful. Let's see. Oh, alright, from Big Naz 2011, he says, what's up, DSP? How's the quality of games been so far this year? Compared to last year, do you think it's better or worse? By far, it's worse. Last year, we had some pretty good games by this point, including like Dead Space 2, Portal 2. I remember early last year, there were some really decent games. This year seems pretty stale. Besides Mass Effect 3, there have been a couple sleeper hits for me, like Darkness 2 and Binary Domain, but not any like standouts. A lot of games I think people thought were going to be great really fizzled, like Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. So for this year at least, it's been slower. As a gaming year, I fully expect it to pick up later in the year, especially next month with Diablo 3, Max Payne 3. There's some big stuff coming out that I think will reinvigorate everything, but it's definitely been a slow start. Alright, so that's it for this episode of Ask the King. Hope that, you know, had some interesting answers for you, and that you enjoyed the episode. Remember, if you want to submit questions for next month, go to thekingofhate.com. In the forums, there's a thread there for Ask the King. You could already put your questions up for the next week or next month. And also, I let you submit your questions on Twitter the day of. So, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope this was informative and fun for you. And I'll see you next month for Ask the King. Peace.